Welcome to the Future 3 podcast. Ba-ba-ba-boo. I'm Sean.
I'm Shaylin.
And I'm Sign.
And we are the Future 3 podcast.
Most doctors treat injuries. Today's guest is trying to prevent them from ever happening in the first place. And then he built a company on the side and sold it. He is one of the leading figures in interventional orthopedics and spine care, a field that is redefining how we think about pain, performance, and the human body. He trained at Cornell, NYU, and New York College of Osteopathic Medicine. He has 24 years of experience, runs a global medicine community, and he's currently leading a clinical trial in the Bahamas, co-founded a company and sold it to Cox Automotive, and mentors young founders on the side. Please welcome to the Future 3 podcast, Dr. Rikin Patel.
Welcome. Impressive resume.
Yeah, ChatGPT can help you out a little bit with that kind of stuff too. But pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I know that you're a sports medicine doctor who is pretty passionate about sports. So I have to ask you, what is the greatest sporting moment that you have ever witnessed?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I grew up in Toronto, and I would have to say that the greatest sports moment I witnessed was against your Philadelphia Phillies. And in the World Series, I was actually at Skydome, Game 6, sitting there when Joe Carter hit that home run, and the Blue Jays won their first World Series ever. So I would say, man, I got chills just thinking about it. I was with my family, my parents, and then I remember like going through the streets, driving home, and my dad never gets really that excited about things, but he's got his like hand outside the window, high-fiving people, and it was just a great run with a great team. So I will say that is definitely my top sports moment. Being in a stadium when you hit a game-winning walk-off home run is truly special.
What I was thinking you were going to say when you said you were from Toronto, I was thinking the Kawhi Leonard buzzer beater against the Sixers.
Oh man, bring
2019.
that up.
Yeah, I didn't make that game, but that was a great sporting moment.
Yeah. So you're a doctor, and you're a serial entrepreneur, and an investor, and a clinical trial investigator. When someone asks you at a party what you do, where do you even start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will tell you that what I've learned is that I don't think you can be defined by your profession, right? So I'm starting to learn that for many years, I define myself as a physician. So, how is a physician supposed to be? How is he supposed to act? What is he supposed to focus on? And I generally now start with, I would say I've coined the term doctorpreneur, right? So I am a physician, but I enjoy entrepreneurship. And truthfully, I think a lot of doing different things is because I enjoy being a part of the creative process. I actually think becoming a physician disconnected me from my creativity. And I'll take a sort of tangent for a second, is I actually wanted to be an architect. So one of the things that I learned that I really had a passion for at a young age was a design and architecture. In fact, it was like 6th grade or 7th grade, literally like on drawing on graph papers, like designs of layouts of homes and where the kitchen is and doing elevations. But I lost a little part of that creativity, no fault to my parents, but because my dad kind of helped me associate someone I knew as an architect. And when I imprinted that in my mind, unfortunately, wasn't the greatest role model of an architect or success outcome from an architect. So I think I was like, I better not do this. I better go into medicine and take that financially safe and sort of prestigious role. But I think now I go back and, as a creator and architect, you get to architect things. As an entrepreneur, you get to sort of design, reiterate, implement, and I think that's the exciting part, building things, and architecture is the design behind building something. And so I think that's where I get that outlet. And it allows me to sort of appreciate um, my creative side, stay to the hustle, because healthcare can become, you know, day in, day out, very routine. And that becomes stagnant. And for that, you don't get to grow as a person.
Yeah, I've never heard of the word doctorpreneur before.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that you were able to turn your creativity of wanting to originally be an architect to kind of still keeping that creativity and becoming an entrepreneur because you were still able to use your mind and kind of help innovate, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had to recognize that this is the way my white life evolved, right? And how can I apply myself in that way? And that's why I take on those projects. And you guys think I should patent that word, doctorpreneur?
You
Try.
should.
Just apply, see what happens. Worst case, they say no.
So you ended up in one of the most demanding career paths, medicine. But as we mentioned, you also layered entrepreneurship on top of that. Were there signs in high school of your passion for science and business?
No, I got to be honest. Like, I think in high school, the only thing I probably focused on was getting the grades. And in fact, if I have to kind of go back memory lane, I was probably pretty good at drama. I remember a drama teacher telling me, like, you should take advanced drama classes and you should talk to your parents about that. Well, I didn't really think that that was such a great idea coming from an Indian household. So, I shelved that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I, I I think what it came down to, over time, is learning what you really want and could wake up being happy doing each day. I don't think it's necessarily the subject matter. And this is another funny story, is like when I told my dad about my first entrepreneurial journey, he comes from the safe mode, area. And that served me really, really well. And I remember him saying, like, we don't do these. This is not made for us. We don't do these type of
Mhm.
things. Right. And it's scary, but at the same time, I felt that, well, if I really dove deep and committed to it, right, I could accomplish it. So I would say that more of it is recognizing what you wake up each day and want to do. Like, what gets you excited? What will you dive deep on?
That's interesting. Because so were you not always good in school in the sciences? Because I know I'm not good at all in sciences, but you ended up going into the science field.
Yeah, I think I don't I think what I was really good at was I created a process for myself to learn something, which was, if I got through the material 3 times, okay? So I read it, wrote notes, reviewed my notes, okay? At least once or twice, hopefully. And then even the morning of, like, I would scan things. I could become that subject matter expert for that time or that test. Right. But truthfully, I don't hold on to knowledge very well. Like, those things that I learned, I I kind of probably focus more in a global sense. I recognize patterns and things very well, but the actual facts, I have to go back and review them. So no, I don't think science was really something that I was particularly good at, even though I chose the field of medicine. Like, I will not say I have a tremendous amount of gratitude that I have this opportunity to be a physician. And I think the mindset that I approach it with now allows me to truly have impact. But I think if you want to be a physician, if your heart is in, I want to take care of people. Okay. I want to provide a service, or in that way, the science you will get through. You can get through the science. And truthfully, with the way we're going with, AI and access to information, right? The bigger part of being the best physician out there is being able to connect to people. to
Yeah.
understanding what they're going through, to hear them, listen, and now be able to sort of have a connection with them where they trust you in their care, and you can provide them guidance. After college, you have another 8 or 9 or 10 years, right, of what your career is going to look before you get to your career. And then you have to understand what that impact has on your life, what that's going to impact your lifestyle.
Yeah. And I feel like the one thing, like as you mentioned before, the one thing that AI is never going to take over is the human connection part, right? Because they're not going to be able to hold a conversation with someone. And if you ask ChatGPT, for example, how do I how do I communicate with this person? It's not going to feel as authentic as it would if you would do it just naturally.
Yeah, and I will tell you, it's a great segue into this. Is what I've learned, and I didn't really appreciate this at a young age, or even I would say into my 30s, but over the last, maybe 5 to 10 years, I'm starting to understand that really it's the energy that's between going on, the interaction of people, that really will allow you to see what it needs to be next. Like, we're not going to need the ability to recall all the information, but then how do we deliver that information in a way that the other person can receive it? And how do you hear what's going on with someone else, that you're actually a good listener? AI is not going to teach us that, right? So it's going to come down to human skills, that more so than having a strong, knowledge base better than everybody else. That's not what's going to drive the future, I believe, even in healthcare.
Yeah, I agree. And another part of that is also like the video calls too, I feel like, because
Hmm.
it's not the same if you're talking to someone on a video call versus in person. So I'm curious to know for you, like I know you do work in the Bahamas as well. So would you rather be on a video call or talking to a customer or a patient, or would you rather just go all the way down to the Bahamas to actually meet them and talk to them and be able to gain their trust in person?
Yeah, so the Bahamas has provided a really unique, situation for me, and when I work currently, right, we work in an unfair healthcare environment. We uh only we can it's the worst business model. Okay, it's a model where we don't get to control our expenses, right? The expenses continue to rise, and also we don't get to control our revenue. So we don't get to actually decide what our time is worth to work with someone. It's basically fixed by the system. And so now, with reduction in reimbursement in the insurance world and increased expenses, you have a bad business. So how do you make up for that? Volume, right? Volume. And it's unfortunate, but doctor's appointments can be 8 to 10 minutes, right? And that's what happens each day. So a lot of it is, unfortunately, you don't want it to be this way, but triage, get to the next appointment. What are we going to do in between? Try to find the time to actually listen. Versus, when I go to the Bahamas, we spend 3 or 4 hours with the people from beginning to end. Then you get to know the person. You get to talk about other things, their perspectives on other parts of life, what they're doing. You learn. It's actually an interaction where people are learning together. And so that is what I believe how healthcare was designed to be, what the doctor's role was meant to be in someone's life. I don't think a 3 to 4 hour appointment is always, possible, but I think the answer lies somewhere in between. I will say, I think the first meeting, there's two ways that I think telehealth does have impact. Is one, sometimes you have a person we've treated people from all over the world, right? Sweden, Australia, England, in the
Yeah.
Bahamas. The telehealth does allow you to create that initial connection and trust. I did a couple of telehealth jobs post COVID, and I got burnt out. Like, it was just like, this is it. Like, I'm at my desk on a chair, on a screen, appointment after appointment. You're right. It didn't feel very real. The one other area I think telehealth is okay is a follow-up. I think it's really hard. You go to a doctor's office, people don't understand on the other side what it costs you. So
Yeah.
telehealth follow-ups, I think, have actually really shifted healthcare for both the physician and patients. Like, you need to go over an MRI, or you need to follow up and see how you're doing 2 to 3 weeks post-injury. I know what you're dealing with. You don't need to come back to the office. We've already seen each other in person. So I think you already nailed this. Is the future is going to be the hybrid. It's going to provide, ease of service, but nothing's going to replace that, point of care in-person contact on many of the sort of visits that we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like going back to what Shaylin said about the in-person versus virtual, I feel like when you're virtual, you don't get the same connection that you do when you're in person because if you're virtual, like for example, when we were in school during COVID, we had to do virtual learning, and most people would just turn their cameras off and just
Yeah.
go play games and be distracted easily. But if you're in person, you could actually see what the other person and how they're reacting.
Yeah, and another part of that for the human connection is is sports because I feel like in high school especially it helps you really connect with people. And I have a question for you. Did you play any sports in high school?
Yeah. So I played the key sports that I played growing up was hockey, and
Oh,
I'm
wow.
but the challenge was when I was a sophomore, I switched schools over the summer rather abruptly. I actually was in Toronto, and over the summer, my cousin introduced me to a private school in Pennsylvania, and literally basically between July and September, I took some placement tests, interviewed, and moved by myself. I moved with my
Wow.
cousins, but started to go to a private school in Pennsylvania. So didn't have a hockey team.
Yeah.
Didn't work out so well, but good thing hockey players play golf in the summer. So I was on the golf team. And then, we were skiers in Canada. So they had a ski team, which I did, and then played baseball in the spring. So yeah, I tried to stay in sports all 3 semesters. And I got to tell you, like, I think the best thing about sports is it gives you that community,
Yep.
right? I've seen it, and I see you guys, and what you guys are doing in sports, and it allows you to have your type of people around, right?
Yeah, and did playing those sports change the way that you thought about the body, injury, and performance?
Yes. So I'm not going to BS you guys and say that as a young Gujarati kid, I was the most physically athletically gifted person. So so I
Yeah.
love sports, but there was a period actually when I first started playing hockey that I couldn't coordinate my left foot, so I only propelled with my right foot. I think one of the things that I'm seeing now in sport compared to when I was growing up is we didn't push the body as much as you guys are getting pushed. It takes a big toll on your body. And no one is really thinking about that. This is still a developing frame. Okay. And early injuries are not what we want because in our current form, on many of them, we don't have the ability to heal back to normal, or we have to alter the healing process using surgeries. And that's not a good thing to experience. So I, I think the load management, and I know people don't love load management in the NBA, and people get upset when guys are sitting on the bench, but I think there's a big difference. And I don't think I saw nearly as many injuries growing up as I see with you guys. And I probably would have shortened career if I had to work at the level that you guys had because I'd probably get injured more. Um, but I also completely understand that, you know, athletics has changed. The level of sport and what people are able to do has advanced so much.
Yeah, and now kind of realizing that you're not going to go professional in sports, you end up going to college where you go to Cornell, which is it's an Ivy League school, so I mean, it's really exclusive, probably a very low acceptance rate. But was that always the goal once you realized that you wanted to go into the medical field, just to go to an Ivy League school as good as Cornell?
Um, I think that the purpose of leaving home at such a young age to go away was really to go to school in the States. Like that was how I was driven to make that move. And I knew applying from a school in the US that was well known would probably be my best chance to go to a top school. Exactly. When you know you're not going to play sports, in at the college level, I think you do choose I did, at least in my time, choose the best academic environment for myself. And that was a goal. And I applied early, and I used the strategy around it. But I know part of me wanted to go to Michigan. So
And
Michigan was close to Toronto, very sports orientated. I was a sports orientated guy, but I got into Cornell, and at the end of the day, the way that's changed and shaped my life, what I've experienced and what I've told my own kids is that, in this journey is, of course, I want them to go where they want to go, but a lot of this is, um, you know, you need to find the right environment for you. And I will say, I went to Cornell sight unseen. I didn't even visit. Okay.
wow.
So I think in my world or at my time, picking the best academic institution made the most sense, right? Like, got to go to the best. And I do believe that schools, you want to know what academics they offer. You want to know what obviously the campus life is like, what the people are like, and obviously what the network is like. Like, how's this school going to serve me when I get out of school? But I think it's not going to only be for your best experience to be picking the top school. I think you really have to know what you're looking for in a holistic school, experience.
Yeah. Agreed. And so, I mean, after you go to after Cornell, you go to New York College of Osteopathic Medicine, and then you completed your residency at NYU Medical Center. So, I mean, what even is osteopathic medicine? I never heard of that before.
Yeah, this is a great question. And in college, I didn't even know much about osteopathy when I started. And I had a choice. I could go to graduate school and try to reapply, or kind of like Cornell, I got, I got into this one school in Long Island and in New York, and it was an osteopathic school. I visited, I understood a lot about what osteopathy is. And to keep it really simple, and it's kind of interesting how where I've ended up in my career now is osteopathy is everything that happens in traditional medicine that we learn in regular medical school. So we take all the same classes. We have access to all the same specialties. Do we maybe not get the same respect? Yes, that's true. And that's just the way it's going to be. And you have to learn that you're still a physician and you're able to do everything another physician who's trained allopathically is able to do. But we learn a lot about the body's inherent ability to heal itself.
Mhm.
Okay. And without getting too much into the weeds, comes from spinal cord tension patterns or flow of your cerebral spinal fluid and general energy and the way things communicate in your body. And osteopathy was kind of built on the premise of we can actually help those pathways. And a lot of it came from the way our spine was aligned or problems going on in the spine or in the brain in the flow of cerebral spinal fluid. So it it's interesting because my career now, really around using cell therapies or stem cells, your own or donor or manufactured stem cells, is really about signaling. It's about helping the body initiate a self-healing response when it's stuck using cells.
Yeah. And you did something that a lot of medical students don't normally do. You also became an entrepreneur on the side. So, I mean, when you were in medical school, did you kind of did you kind of notice that those entrepreneurial kind of traits kind of starting to evolve and show out?
But yeah, great question. So it wasn't actually in medical school. In medical school, I picked a specialty a lot based on what I enjoyed, which was treating sports related orthopedic injuries, but also lifestyle. So I chose something. I saw what surgeons were doing. Orthopedic surgery looked cool, trauma surgery looked cool. But I asked myself, I was like, man, am I the type of person who 10, 15, 20 years down the road wants that lifestyle, right? Being on call, doing a lot of surgery. Sometimes you can't predict those things. And that really wasn't for me. So I picked a specialty that allowed me some access into the things that I enjoyed. Entrepreneurship actually kind of came by default. And I think this is an important part as you go through any career is having the awareness of, as my career is evolving, what am I good at? Am I good at, you know, leadership? Am I good at executive function? Am I good at strategy? Am I just a hard worker and I can operate things? And when I first joined my first practice, um, I started to recognize, and it was a larger group, and I eventually became partner, but I was really good at strategic thinking, running meetings, looking at operations and how to implement things. And truthfully, I fell into entrepreneurship. My cousin came to me because at that time I was the closest doctor who could write him a $5,000 check so he could buy a beat up yellow DHL van and wash cars overnight in the city of Philadelphia. And he's like, I need money. And I said, okay, great. I said, the only caveat here is if this goes somewhere, we become partners. And we agreed on that. And so I think when that opportunity evolved, goes back to the words that I started with in the beginning is when we became partners, I had the option to create a company, right? Innovate in the space. We moved from sort of power washing cars on the side of the road to cleaning them with only steam. So there was no environmental runoff, and we could detail like those car shares right on the spot without moving them. Like we were being innovative, and I knew I could impact the business. My cousin was young and it was his first business, and I took what I learned in running a practice and being a partner in a large business. The principles were the same, and reapply those to a startup. And that's sort of where that entrepreneurship and that sort of spirit kind of came. And I learned that I'm kind of good at this, and I enjoy it. So that's where that developed from. And then also, to be truthful, I went through burnout. Like I was burnt out doing the same thing over and over again. And I had to recognize that I was in a hamster wheel, and the only one that could get me off that hamster wheel is myself.
Yeah, I feel like as you try more things as you get older, it helps you, as you said, grow, and it also helps others grow as you share your experience with others. Like just like this podcast, where we're doing the same exact thing.
Yeah, and I think this is great. Like I want to, take a moment like to do this and talk to different people at a young age and hear their perspectives, right? And see what they did, good and bad along the way can help you align with what you really want to do,
Yeah.
right? And the type of person that you want to be, because sometimes we don't have access to different ways of life. We grow up in a certain sort of bubble, right? And or certain type of people we're around, and having the ability to go out and see different things and experience different ways, or talk to different people. Like you said, it's you get to grow at a younger age
Yeah.
and grow into who you're going to be. And that allows you to show up, in the way that you want to show up and be radically honest and authentic.
So let's talk about regenerative medicine, because that is where the future is heading right now. Can you please break that down in the simplest way possible?
Yeah, so let's talk about sports injuries, okay? Because we could talk about
Mhm.
regenerative medicine in so many different fields, and that's what's going to happen. But when you injure tissue, okay, in general, it doesn't heal well on its own. And the reason is because it doesn't have good blood supply, okay? If you cut your skin, right, you see it heal really, really well because there's good blood supply. Our body has incredible signaling mechanisms to stimulate healing. But in a lot of tissue injuries, let's say rotator cuff tear, you hear about in an athlete, or you hear about, an ACL injury or meniscus injury, or an athlete develops tendonitis or arthritis. Sometimes it gets stuck, and the inflammation, which is what causes pain, persists. And so regenerative medicine is basically got three main principles. One is that we have the ability to significantly impact the inflammation that's causing pain using cells. Those cells come from your blood, they can come from your bone marrow, they can come from fat, they can come from umbilical tissue. There's so many sources of these cells. And when we inject them into and around the tissue, we basically shift the environment from a pro-inflammatory environment that causes pain to an anti-inflammatory environment. If you see a house and someone's remodeling, okay,
Mhm.
there's going to be subcontractors that are going to drop off things to the site, and then the other cells are like general contractors who kind of tell the body what to do. So it's all signaling, but that's remodeling something, and that takes time versus a cortisone shot, which you might hear about athletes getting.
Yeah.
That's just basically the fire department coming by and putting out the fire and saying, okay, we took care of the fire. Good luck. We're not going to help try to fix any tissue.
Mm.
And then you're going to hear a lot about athletes who get repetitive cortisone shots. They're getting shots all the time because they're kicking the problem down the curb, okay, just to stay on the field. But over time, they're actually weakening that tissue and becoming more susceptible to injury or further degradation.
Yeah, so basically, like so the shift has been from cortisol shots, which is just like not it's not even healing, it's just making you feel better, like temporarily, to now being able to heal with cells and like helping, not literally just doing the healing for you, but just kind of being a little boost for the body to help speed it up,
like a
right?
guide.
Like
Yeah,
what?
exactly. So
Wow.
basically, you're giving the body the signal and the resources to try to say, help me heal this problem.
So we always like to ask our guests this one big question. What is your definition of success and how has it changed from your high school days to today?
So success definitely in high school was about all the things that, you think are super, super, super valuable, and my definition today is so much more based on experience, memories, and love. Loving the relationships that you're in, loving the people that you work with, um, loving your time around family, and making lasting memories. Things that you can, like you mentioned, like it's greatest sports moment being at that.
Mhm.
I always look at things as like, what can I do in the present? Not trying to worry too much about the future. Always plan for the future, but not worrying about it or living in the past.
Yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. So, I mean, this has been a great episode with you, Dr. Patel. But at the end of all the episodes, we like to turn the tables to ask if you have any questions for us today.
Yeah. So I have some questions for you guys. One, I think these are important things. Is like, what truly makes you happy?
Honestly, for me, it's sports because it kind of gives me an out from the chaos of life. Like there's a lot going on in school and outside of school. Like just being on a field, just me and a ball, it's just so therapeutic in a way and like relaxing.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like building is my way of getting out of this world um because as Shaylin said, there's so much that's going on. Like there's sports, there's school, all of that stuff. So yeah, I think building just helps me find a way to calm my mind down.
For me, it's also sports because it just calms me down. Like it makes me peaceful. Just hanging out there with my friends, just throwing the football, playing basketball, playing soccer, and honestly, like yes, a couple of days ago, I went to a baseball game with my friend, and they were just like this mini golf place, and it was like really fun to just like get away from all the chaos and just play and just putt. It was like really fun.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that question is because if you know and recognize that now, of course, it's going to shift. Like you might not play on a travel team as an adult,
Hmm.
right?
Mhm.
But remember what makes you happy and carry that or find an outlet or way to just continue to discover that throughout your life, even if your career has nothing to do with it or if your career is all in on it. But what makes you happy. You have to keep that as sort of a building block of your daily rituals because that's what gives you the energy to show up the way you want to show up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think I'll be playing soccer competitively when I'm older,
Mhm.
but I definitely am gonna even just try to get out and just kick a ball around once in a while just to keep my love for the game, you know?
Yeah, I love it. And I got into coaching. That was another way to have a
Yeah,
sports
that's what
outlet.
I
Like
was
I loved it,
thinking.
coaching the kids. So, okay, my next question is, what is your greatest fear?
Ooh,
My
I think
great
you can go.
my greatest fear is not being able to like maintain the current lifestyle of living. Like that's I always think about that every once in a while. Like how am I gonna be able to keep like making enough money to be able to like support myself and my family too? Like that's my biggest fear as of right now.
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest fear is going to be the evolution of AI and how it's going to impact conversations between people. Because I feel like some people are going to be too reliant on AI and it's not going to be genuine and like
Mm,
natural between people.
For me, I think my greatest fear is just like, wow, I don't even know. That's a hard question.
maybe the fear is not knowing the answer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
My greatest fear is like just like keep making sure I stay happy and just making sure my parents live a great life.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I think, remember that fear sometimes is just a limitation to transformation, right? And transforming yourself, and it's holding you back
Mhm.
from the next level of greatness that you want to get to. And so when you start to look at or shift your relationship to fear could make you not want to pursue a business because you could fail, right? You could lose
Yeah.
all the money. Like there's so many things that will limit your life.
Mhm.
And so, but when you're aware of your fears and you know that they're actually just limiting beliefs, so I ask the question is be aware and be able to speak them out loud. Because if you can speak them out loud, then you're not holding them in. It's out there in the open. And sometimes you can be like, oh, that's so stupid. That's such a stupid fear. Like, why am I so afraid of that?
Mhm.
Or you can process like why you have that limiting belief.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that quote on my wall. Fear's just a limit.
Yeah, it
Nice.
is. I never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as something that just like kind of occupies space in our mind. Like it's just unnecessary to have fears sometimes, but like the reality is we're all going to have it, so we kind of have to just embrace it as you said and kind of just take note that this is just this bad thought or fearful thought is just going to stop us from accomplishing what we actually want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's been a real pleasure having you on this podcast. We really had a great time talking to you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure learning more about your career because it's really interesting about how the sports medicine world actually works.
And how quickly it's evolving. It's insane.
Exactly.
I love what you guys are doing to take the initiative, put yourself out there, talk to people. It's you're gonna look back on this time and recognize like what sort of a ramp it was to whatever future path that the three of you take on. See how I put that together in the title.
Yeah,
Future.
like Future 3. Yeah, I get it.
You guys can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads. Every single social media platform will be there. We're the Future 3 Podcast, and we out.
Peace.